Hi, and welcome to 10Web's channel. Thanks for joining us and coming to our YouTube channel. We are starting a new interview series named Agency Talks with web, marketing, and design agencies as our guests. We'll talk here about the challenges they face, they will share their experiences, and we'll get the best tips for agencies. Today, my guest is Brent Weaver. He is the CEO of UGURUS. He's speaker, he's advisor, and investor. And he also wrote a book called Get Rich in the Deep End, Commit to Your Niche, Own Your Market, and Audaciously Scale Your Agency. He's also a host of the podcast named The Digital Agency Show.
This video was brought to you by 10Web, a WordPress platform to get all your websites an automatic PageSpeed score of 90+. Sign up for a 14-day free trial and experience true automation.
Welcome, Brent, to 10Web's channel.
Thanks for having me, Tigran. Great to be here, man.
We too, very happy. Could you please tell a bit about your story? How did the idea of helping agency owners started, and how did all this come about?
Yeah, when I started my agency, I knew how to build websites, and I had pretty much no business skills to speak of. I never went to business school. I didn't read a business book. I just loved creating websites, and I needed to pay for some servers that I was using for some personal projects, and started to do websites for money. So the first website I got was $500 to build a candy store website out in Michigan. And over the next 7 years, I pretty much made every mistake that you could make trying to grow and run an agency. And a lot of those things caused me a lot of heartache, a lot of grief, a lot of late nights, a lot of stress. As you can see, I have a lot of gray hair. And when I started UGURUS, it was really on the mission to help people avoid those mistakes. Because for the first 7 years I ran my agency, made a lot of mistakes, started kind of figuring some stuff out. And the last 5 years that I ran my agency, we had a lot of success. And so when I started UGURUS 9 years ago, really what I wanted to do is figure out how to take that 10 years of growth and learning through trial and error and help people learn that in as little as 10 weeks or a year.
Great. So you are in a good position to help agencies, as this is your experience. Very nice.
Yeah, I've done it. I've had an agency. I've worked with thousands of agency owners. I'm actually now a partner and investor in another agency. We're about a 50-person shop these days. So I definitely have experience on starting and growing it from scratch, and now, being a part of a pretty big team as well.
Cool. Absolutely. You consider time management as one of the top challenges. If you don't mind, let's briefly go over the most effective and proven time management techniques you think will be helpful for agencies.
Yeah. Well, so, think about an agency, a lot of agencies are selling their time to other companies. That's the most basic agency business model or freelancer business model, is that your clients need you to do something, and it's going to take you a certain amount of time, and you're going to bill them for that. And a lot of people start thinking, hey, can I do more things? Can I start to shift to value-based pricing? Whether it's just you or you have a team, the fact is time is a huge input to your business. So I think that learning how to manage your time, starting to create some positive time habits is something that's really a good idea. I have kind of 5 specific tactics that I personally use to manage my time. I'm happy to share those with your audience if you think it'd be valuable.
Yeah, great. Let's go briefly over all of them.
Yeah. So my first time management habit is around prioritization. And I use a tool called Kanban to set my priorities for what are the things and projects and to-dos that I'm working on. Because, it's one thing to work faster, but if you're working faster or harder on the wrong stuff, then that's not a really good idea, right? So Kanban is just a really simple idea of having a list of things in your backlog, spending some time to think about and prepare those things to work on moving them to a ready state, and then choosing a small amount of things, like 1 or 2 things to be working on, and then you focus on those things until they're done. And so it's this constant kind of loop of prioritizing things, adding things to your backlog and kind of dumping all those ideas and shiny objects onto your backlog, and then having a prioritization routine on those to make sure that you're always working on the most important things. So that's the first thing that I do to manage my time.
Great. Perhaps a couple of more?
Yeah. So another tool that works really well with Kanban is this thing called a Pomodoro timer. So there's a lot of focus timers and things like that. I like to use a physical timer. It's a little, and I just move it. More normal Pomodoros are 25 minutes. So I get this nice little red thing on my calendar. And then when the time is up, it has this really obnoxious, annoying beep. And sometimes I want to throw it against the wall because I want to keep working. But I always just know, hey, I got to get up, walk around, stretch, and then come back and do another Pomodoro. And the reason there's a lot of great stuff out there on Pomodoros. The reason I love it is it gives you permission to focus on something. And it also reminds you to take a step back every once in a while, because sometimes we get stuck on something being harder than it needs to be. And by simply walking away from it for a couple of minutes can be a really important thing.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, to avoid any distraction, at least for a short period, because we live in a world where there are a lot of notifications, a lot of stuff popping up, trying to gather your attention.
I won't even talk about notifications today, but probably the best time management thing you could do is just turn off all of your notifications, right? I mean, if you have, I have one channel of notifications that I get, which is text messages from my wife, because we've got 2 young kids. She's the only person that can send me a notification that's going to beep or pop up on my desktop or whatever, right? Everything else, Slack included, email, it's all turned off in notification. Actually, in the beginning of this year, I even turned off calendar notifications because I found that when I was in meetings and I was present with people, and it was like that last couple of minutes of a meeting, if I had something that started right afterwards, it would beep and it would distract me and it would take me away from being present for my team. And so I've even turned those off, which requires you to kind of keep an eye on the time and know where you need to be that day and review your diary every day. But, making sure that you have those notifications turned off. So a couple other little things that I use to grow on. One is calendar blocking. So blocking out your calendar for the things that you want to work on that week. Or if you're like a solopreneur, blocking out specific days for certain types of activities. So making sure, hey, every week you have like a 3 or 4 hour, marketing time blocked on your calendar where you're just going to work on the business to market, and make sure that you respect that calendar blocking. The second tactic on the calendar blocking is this idea of take the ticket. And this is a mindset that you can see in restaurants when somebody orders something and the ticket comes up on the chef's, the little printer, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when that ticket comes up, right, do they debate about whether they're going to make this dish or not? Right? Do they go like, oh, I don't know, maybe I feel like it, maybe no, they take the ticket, they make the meal, right? So exactly. if you're gonna use calendar blocking, it's only effective, or it's mostly effective if you use a take the ticket mentality. Meaning, if you say to yourself, okay, on Thursday from 12 to 4, I'm going to work on the marketing for my business. And then Thursday comes up and maybe you got some sticky client fire going on. Maybe you've got something else in your business that seems more important at the time, right? Well, if you take the ticket mentality, no matter how hard this client is asking you to do their urgent issue first, right? You've put marketing on your calendar from 12 to 4. And the take the ticket mentality says, you just take the ticket and you do that, and you have to reprioritize the other things that fall in that space, right? But if you block your calendar, and then every time you come up on something that you said, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do this during this time, you question that, then it's going to degrade the calendar blocking experience, and you're going to stop calendar blocking altogether because you're never honoring those commitments, right? Exactly. And then the last real quick time management tip for your audience is this thing I call a load factor. It's something that I teach in our community of agency owners. And it's looking at what you currently do every day, every week, every month, and assigning a number to the amount of time that you're going to invest in this type of activity every week, every month, every quarter for the next 5 years. And so what's really interesting about this, let's say there's something that you do every day, but it doesn't feel like it takes a lot of time. Maybe it's like, 30 minutes where you have to go in and write updates for all of your clients, right? And we think, oh, this doesn't take me very long. It's like 30 minutes, right? Well, if we take that 30 minutes and we multiply it by 5, and we multiply that by 52, right? So we take 30 minutes, we multiply, and I'm going to do it for us today. So we take 30 minutes, we multiply it by 5, we multiply that by 52 for 52 weeks of the year, we multiply that by 5 for 5 years, and we get 39,000 minutes, which comes out to about 650 hours of time. And so sometimes, like, that's a big number. But sometimes what happens is we, instead of delegating things that we're doing frequently, but don't take a lot of time, instead we think of, oh man, like every 2 weeks I have to create a proposal and it takes me an hour, and I'm going to hire a salesperson to do that because it's so annoying when I have to do it. So instead of us delegating the thing that is actually taking up a huge amount of our time, we start trying to delegate the things that actually don't take up very much time, but they might have some negative stress or emotional stress around them. But by hiring a salesperson, it's not actually going to free up any of our time, right? So you have to look at the load factor of everything that you're doing. And then my recommendation is the things that you should try to get off your plate are the things that are taking up, that have the highest load factor, and they're your least favorite things. Those are the things that you want to get off your plate first. And then that's like the real secret to time management, is when you can just open up huge swaths of your time because you have other people in your business helping you.
Yeah, that was great point. Yeah. Can you tell us more about an approach you called creating sanctuaries of balance? What is it about?
Yeah. So in terms of creating sanctuaries of balance is about creating like magic time in your calendar, but also creating and protecting certain time that keeps you like a sane and healthy person. So a lot of times people suffer from, in our field, right? We work from home. We're on all the time. Our clients always have unrealistic expectations of us. And so one of the common things that happens for people is they get burned out. And so and burnout sneaks up on you. It's like, it's not there until it's there. And then once it's there, it's really, really hard to get rid of, right? It's like, I don't know. It's like a roommate in college that like says like, hey man, I need a place to crash for a couple of nights, and then a couple of nights turns into a few more nights. And then before you know it, you're like, we got this dude, John, who's been on the couch for 6 months. Like, we don't know how to get rid of him. Right. Like, we don't know, like he's getting his mail at our house now. Like, I don't know, like we can't, like, how do we get him out? Right. So burnout is kind of like that, right? It's like, it doesn't really it doesn't announce itself like, hey, if you keep doing this, you're going to burn out. Right. It just kind of shows up one day. And if we're not protected in the right way, right, it can show up, and then it's really hard to get rid of. Right. So one of the things that you need to look at in terms of your week is make sure every week you've got some magic time. And what I mean by that is time that is reserved for you to create whatever you love creating, even if it doesn't make financial sense. Okay. So like for me, writing, I write a lot. I published a book, but sometimes me writing like social media content or writing for my own journaling or things like that, like doesn't have a financial price tag attached to it. Like I could use that time and coach a client and probably make 10 times as much money. But it helps me feel balanced and good. Okay. So magic time is that time that we use to create magic, right? It's create the stuff that is going to have a huge benefit to us. The other stuff is making sure you take care of, your fitness and general well-being, take care of your family, make time to take care of your finances and things like that. So blocking in time, whether it's a Saturday or Sunday morning, a Friday afternoon, where you say, hey, look, this is my time to take care of personal stuff. We have a developer audience, right? I mean, we're web designers and developers. We're all familiar with this idea of technical debt, right? Where you cut some corners when it comes to coding out a website or coding an app, right? You take some liberties, right? You're like, I'll fix that later, right? Maybe you don't comment your code. Well, the same thing happens in life, right? Is if you don't have that time to create that balance every single week, is you start to take on emotional debt. You can start to take on some mindset and general energy debt. And then you can also take on some literal financial debt, right? Because we're not taking care of like, oh, actually, I'm spending a lot more money than I'm making. Like that should be something that I fix. And the longer that we don't fix that stuff, the more that contributes to burnout and other things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I discovered that in my case, like that magic time is perhaps just 20% of working time. But it's still enough for me to think about creative stuff or strategic stuff that I forget about when doing the daily operations. How much is in your case your magic time?
My magic time is kind of the hours between about 5 and 7 in the morning. So I wake up around 5 a.m., sometimes a little bit before, sometimes a little bit after. So it varies a little bit. I kind of get ready in the morning. I come down to the little desk behind me. I sit down, I do a little mindfulness activity. I read a little bit, I journal, and then I try to write. I mean, that's kind of my gold standard of magic time is if I get through all that stuff, get centered, I get some journaling, some thinking time, and then maybe I write, 500 to 1,000 words. Sometimes that writing just ends up in the trash. Sometimes it ends up in a folder on my computer. Sometimes I publish it. But if I get through that, I consider that a really good use of magic time. So about 2 hours a day. It's the first thing I do every day. Sometimes I don't do it, but when I get on a good roll, I always feel like a great person.
Yeah, that's great advice. An eternal question: how do you deal with procrastination?
Procrastination. So I mentioned the take the ticket mindset. That can be a really powerful tool to overcome procrastination. Is that instead of, because procrastination comes when we choose to not do something. And so if and for whatever reason, right, there's resistance around it. Maybe we're distracted, right? But we're constantly choosing to not do something. And so if you can overcome procrastination by simply just, if you wrote down a to-do, instead of thinking about, should I do this? Really, that thought should have already happened. The second you wrote down the to-do was your commitment to doing this thing. And so if you can start to remove that decision-making and that resistance from the point of doing the work, that can be a huge lift to procrastination, right? I hate to say don't think so much, right? But that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that is make sure that your priorities are aligned. If you feel like you're not sure about where you're headed, maybe part of your procrastination is that you don't have a clear vision or personal mission of why you're doing what you're doing. And so it might be useful for you to simply just sit down and say, hey, why am I doing this, right? Why am I working so hard? Why am I here? And sometimes that helps us to focus more on who we are. And once we're clear on that, doing the things necessary are usually pretty easy.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was really nice. Let's move to agencies. So you have great experience in helping agencies to scale their businesses. What do you think are typical or the most important challenges that agencies have? Are they market related? Are they internal or like related to hiring or other stuff?
I mean, agencies have a lot of problems. Businesses have a lot of problems, right? And agencies aren't, they're not immune to normal business problems around leads and sales and operations and leadership and mindset. So there's a lot of issues out there. I mean, the message that I try to bring to agencies is usually around how they're marketing themselves and sharing their expertise with the world, because I think a lot of agencies are under, they're not in demand as much as they could be, or maybe sometimes they are, and then they ignore their marketing, they ignore sharing what they're doing with the world, and then one day, referrals dry up and they kind of end up in a big problem. Also, the types of clients we attract dictates what kind of work we do. It dictates how much we get paid. It dictates how much demand we have for our business. And so I think a lot of problems in an agency can be solved when we're really clear on who our ideal customer is, and we take consistent effort over time to build awareness with that type of person. And nobody's going to come into an agency and slap them on the wrist for not marketing their business this week. Like, nobody's going to punish you for not writing that blog post, for updating your portfolio, for asking a podcast if you can be on their show, or pitching your webinar to somebody. Like, nobody will penalize you for that. But the reality is if you don't do those activities, even an hour a week, right, you're not going to get that client, right, that dream client. So if you can just dedicate an hour or 2 hours a week, I know you're busy with clients, but if you can dedicate that time to marketing your business, it can have a huge impact over the life of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you please tell an example or perhaps certain case, of course, without naming the agency, that was really valuable for you? You got a lot of experience from that case, or this is quite common problem, or any other interesting case?
So, a recent agency, I'll tell you who the guy's name is Alex. He's a client of mine. And when he first started, he connected with me. His agency was not in a good place. I'll just leave it at that, right? He was losing money. He'd been losing money for some time. And he had tried to create an offer for his business that was underpriced. It was kind of this volume approach that a lot of early stage agencies trick themselves into thinking is a good idea. And he tried it for a very long time. And the problem is he was modeling his agency's packages off of a very different structured company. Somebody else's company, he looked at them from the outside, was like, wow, they're offering these really cheap packages. We should do that too. Well, the problem is his lead acquisition system, his customer acquisition system was not set up to be able to have that business work. He was still doing a lot of personal sales. He was connecting with all of his customers. He wasn't spending money on ads or SEO or the things like that. He was not achieving the scale that you need to make that work. And so his business was losing money and he almost went out of business. And so one of the things we did with him was help him to restructure his offer, his pricing, his packages, so that they not only worked for the market, but they worked for the agency and the agency owner and their team. And it wasn't overnight, but over the next year, he completely changed trajectory. This year, they've actually had the best year they've ever had. From January until now, they've doubled last year's revenue. They're working with amazing clients and they're super profitable. So pricing and positioning is a really important thing to think about, because if you're 3 degrees off, it might seem like everything is mostly there, but hey, if we're 3 degrees off and we leave a destination and we travel far enough, like it's the difference between, leaving London and flying to the United States, and instead of landing in Denver, you land in Antarctica, right? Like that's how fundamental, even a small bit of being off can create over a longer period of time.
Interesting case. What would you suggest to build or how to build a company culture where everyone values time? And especially this is important for agencies, that not only agency owner, but his or her team are in sync in this regard.
Yeah. So in terms of team members valuing time generally in the business, one of the best ways you can do that is first of all, is be open and transparent about how your business makes money. So if you're billing clients by the hour, or you're using time from past projects in your quoting process and in your proposal process, it's really important for your team to be aware of that. So when you ask them to track time, it's not because you just want to micromanage them. It's because your business model is tied to time. And so a lot of agencies make that mistake. They have their team members, they try to get their team members to do time tracking, and everybody thinks it's a total pain in the butt. And so they don't do it, or they don't do it accurately, because they don't understand how the business model and them getting paid, their paycheck is tied to the time it takes to do work being accurate. So going to your team and being a little bit more open book and saying, hey guys, here's how much we charge per hour. Here's where all that money goes. It's not because it's all going into my pocket, right? We have an office, we have expenses, we have Facebook ads, we have all this stuff, right? And if we don't track time, it's like we have inventory in a jewelry store and it's like walking out the back door, right? And that's not cool, right? So in order for our business to be successful, in order for us to get raises, health insurance, benefits, stock, whatever, right? We need to track time and be aware of what we're doing. The cool part about this is as we track time and we get clear on it, it's not about being punitive or micromanaging, but we can also analyze that time and we can figure out how to be even more profitable. And if the business is more profitable, we can grow more, we can invest more in culture, we can invest more in training. We're all going to get bigger bonuses at the end of the year. So making sure that your team is bought into why you need to track time in your business, the value it brings to the entire company, and then building a culture where that's a permission to play task. It's not optional. It's not something you do sometimes. It's something that you have to do all the time to make the business work.
That was a great piece of advice. Thank you. How can our viewers get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can check out our website, UGURUS.com. That's UGURUS.com. Or if you want me to hook you up with our website, sales proposal template, I also have a course called the Web Design Sales Kit. We usually sell it for a couple $100. Just drop me an email, Brent@UGURUS.com, and just say, I saw you on 10 Webs. I'd love the course. Happy to give that to any of your listeners for free.
Great. Thank you very much, Brent. It was a really great pleasure to host you this first time in our newly launched interview series, Agency Talk. Thank you so much for sharing these helpful tips and tricks. Definitely worth trying.
This video was brought to you by 10Web, a WordPress platform to get all your websites an automatic PageSpeed score of 90+. Sign up for a 14-day free trial and experience true automation.
Thank you also for watching this episode. Subscribe, please leave a comment and ask any question either to us or to Brent. Let's see you in another interview, which is coming soon.